and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 468, and today's date is September 16th, 2014, and the title of this episode is U.S. Central Bankers Ready to Attack Syria Under the Pretext Assad Unleashed the Islamists in Iraq. Now, we have to take a look at the big picture here. We see the United States and other private Western central bank countries moving towards war. They want to get the terror group. This is what they're using. This is what they're trying to convince everyone of. But we have to understand that this Islamic State was once part of the Free Syrian Army. The U.S. central bankers got caught in a scandal where they were funding terrorists, and everyone couldn't understand it. So they had to separate this group and train them someplace else and use the Free Syrian Army as the moderates. And we can see right now the Free Syrian Army and the Islamic State have formed a non-aggression pact where they will not attack each other, which they really weren't doing anyhow. They will combine forces and go after Assad and remove Assad, because that is the main goal. And again, it has been the main goal since the beginning. Nothing has changed whatsoever. Now, in the corporate media, what I'm seeing is they're trying to link up Syria with the Islamists that ran into Iraq, the Islamic State. They're saying that Assad released all these Islamic prisoners, and they formed this group, and they moved into Iraq. And I can see now how they're trying to spin some of this, because we have to understand, Syria is a sovereign nation. Syria would like to work with the United States. Iran would like to work with the United States. Russia would like to work with the United States to combat terrorism. But the United States central bankers have other plans. They're maneuvering to get Assad, and this is what it's all about. Because the same time where they're saying they're going after the Islamic State, the president has also included in his speech, they needed to fund the Free Syrian Army. He also mentioned that if Syria would if they fire on the United States would take out certain key targets. Now, we can understand where all of this is going, and we can see right now that the Congress is misinformed. They're voting on something they really don't understand, only what they're being told, and a lot of them do want war. So we can see right now they're really pushing the war agenda. They're being backed by Israel. They're being backed by the central bankers, and they're pushing and pushing, and they're not going to stop until they get war. It's almost like Ukraine. The bankers are in control. They need war to cover up this collapse. They need to get into Syria. They need to take out Assad. They need then to move into Iran. They need to capture all the natural resources and put the dollar as the reserve currency so other countries buy the oil from both of these countries. And of course, as we know, it's not just oil. There's also natural gas there and other natural resources. So we can see right now that this is being pushed very, very hard, and they are getting ready to go to war. They're prepping, they're maneuvering military assets, they're bringing in more advisors, which are really combat-ready Marines ready to go. But of course, they call them advisors right now to convince everyone that, we really don't have boots on the ground when we really do. Now, throughout the world, what we're seeing is the economies of the world are completely falling apart. Europe is pretty much in a recession/depression. It's starting to spread now. We're starting to see it in UK. We're starting to see it in Germany. And right now, Germany, their recovery is petering out right now. German investors are getting more and more bearish about the country's economic situation, and Europe as a whole. The ZEW index of investor confidence in the Eurozone dropped to 14.2 this morning, and the German reading slumped to 6.9. Both are the lowest since 2012. The fact that the index is barely positive means that only a small majority of investors see German economic conditions improving in the next 6 months. And we're seeing that investor sentiment has fallen, and it has fallen for the 9th straight month right now. And we can see that it's really starting to take its toll. The entire Eurozone is falling apart, and it's starting to affect those countries that were strong and doing well. And it is like a domino effect. As these countries start to fall, it spreads across the country, and it eventually across Europe, and it eventually hits other countries that were doing well, and it brings them down. Now, out in China, China was going to pretty much have the Shanghai Gold Exchange go live on the 29th of September. But it looks like they're a little bit ahead of schedule right now, because the SGE said today that the International Board will go live this Thursday, September 18th, 11 days ahead of its original launch date. 40 members of the exchange, including global banks UBS, Goldman Sachs, HSBC, and Standard Chartered, will participate in gold trading on the Shanghai Gold Exchange International Board, trading 11 yuan-denominated physical gold contracts. The SGE is also opening a precious metal vault facility in the free trade zone with a 1,000-ton capacity limit. So they are going to rival New York. We can see the yuan is really picking up steam. A lot of countries are protecting themselves, creating bilateral trades with China, and we can see how this is all starting to form right now. And if we look back a year ago, it was just starting to happen, and now it's full force, where we're seeing that yuan, renminbi, there's clearinghouses, there's many countries that are doing bilateral trades, and we can see now the Shanghai Gold Exchange now opening up in China. So this is really pushing forward. Again, the BRIC nations understand what is going on. They realize the dollar is on its last leg. They're trying to protect themselves, separate themselves from the West, and they're really pushing this really hard at this point. Now, we understand Obamacare has been pretty much bringing on a lot of illegals onto Obamacare, giving them subsidies and trying to boost his numbers. And it looks like the Obama administration has given enrollees in Obamacare who may be illegal immigrants more time to clear up their immigration status before being pretty much dropped from Obamacare, and it looks like there's about 115,000 enrollees still that have questionable immigration status on their applications. But don't worry, the government will step in. It will clear all this up, show them what to do so they can get the subsidies, so they can be on Obamacare. And as more illegals come into the country, they too will get onto Obamacare and boost these numbers up, because this is exactly why they have the illegals coming into the country. In states across the country, though, illegal immigrants have slipped into the healthcare exchange in one way or another. The Obama administration assured illegal aliens that if they signed up for Obamacare, their information would not be used for deportation procedures. That is simply amazing. So they have the information, and if you sign up for Obamacare, we won't even look at that information to deport you, of course, because that would lower the numbers of Obamacare, and he's counting on this to keep the system running, because what they realize and what they hoped to happen was the youth of America was going to say, oh, great, health insurance. I don't have a job, or I have a part-time job and I'm living in my parents' basement, but thank God I have health insurance. No, it didn't work out. The youth of America, most of the people, and I remember when I was that age, I could care less about health care. It made no difference to me, because I thought, I'm young, I'm healthy, what can go wrong? And a lot of the young people do not think this way whatsoever. I talked to my nephew, I talked to other relatives who were in the age range between 18 and 25, they could care less about the health issue, about joining health insurance. What they're looking for is, once they graduate, a job, and most of them cannot find this, and this is the problem. And we can see right now the only way to keep Obamacare going is to bring in the illegals, put them on Obamacare, and of course they don't make enough money, so what's going to happen is they get these subsidies from the government. Now, a while back, Obama said he was going to, pretty much overhaul the NSA spy program. And you know what has happened since then? Absolutely nothing. President Obama's deadline to make such changes has been extended for the third time in a row. According to the National Journal, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court approved a request for the Justice Department to renew the NSA's Section 215 telephony metadata program, part of the Patriot Act, on Friday. The program allows the NSA to spy on American citizens by collecting phone records. And this is the third time in a row. He is absolutely doing nothing. NSA program working full steam ahead. They're not going to rein it in whatsoever. They need to understand what everyone is doing in America. They need to understand what the foreign nations are doing. They needed to blackmail certain judges. They needed to find out certain investment information, and they're not going to let this go whatsoever. And they're just going to keep delaying it, and they'll never get around to really overhauling the entire thing. Now, it looks like governments are spying on journalists with weaponized malware. They're also spying on dissidents, and what they're doing is they're using weaponized surveillance malware. And it's very popular among intelligence agencies for spying on journalists, activists, and political dissidents. And it's produced by Finn Fisher, a German company. Finn Fisher spyware exploits and monitors systems remotely. It's capable of intercepting communications and data from OS X, Windows, Linux computers, as well as Android, iOS, BlackBerry, Symbian, and Windows mobile portable devices. The spyware can steal keystrokes, Skype conversations, and even connect to your webcam and watch you in real time. So we can see pretty much that all governments right now are very, very worried about the people and what they're doing and what they're thinking about, and if they're forming secret meetings and talking about what's going on with the governments, and they're very, very nervous about this. And this is why we see nations around the world getting prepared for civil disobedience or civil unrest. And we see Spain is all doing it. We see Europe has the European police. We see the UK has bought water cannons. We see the United States has DHS. They pretty much militarized all the police around the country. They're all in compliance with DHS, and we can see they're just very, very nervous about what is going on, because they realize once this collapse hits, the dollar's being devalued, prices start going up, things start to fall apart. This is when the scary moment starts for them, because they realize the people are going to be very, very angry. They're not going to know what to do. A lot of people are going to lose their jobs. They're not going to be able to survive, and there are going to be runs on supermarkets. There's going to be rioting in the big cities, and this is why you see DHS in the big cities getting ready and prepared, making sure they're working very, very closely with the law enforcement in these areas. Now, I saw something on the Today Show on September 8th, NBC's Today Show, and they aired a segment on how to survive a home invasion. Now, we have to expand upon this, but the basic premise is that they want you to cooperate with the invaders. Treat them like royalty, and tell the location of everything they want to know in the house. The advice did not include acquiring a gun for the defense of one's life, the lives of one's family, and one's property. So they left that completely out. And basically what happened was correspondent Jeff Rosen spoke with former NYPD detective and hostage negotiator William Zines. Zines said you should absolutely tell the invaders where the money, the jewelry are, and if they corner you or capture you, you should treat them like royalty. Don't lie to them. They don't like that. He said you might avoid capture by keeping a can of wasp spray by your bed, which would be used to spray the invaders in the face. But he really didn't explain, if you're holding the wasp spray can and the intruder has a shotgun or a 9mm handgun, what do you do? Now, we can see why they're doing this. They're trying to pretty much brainwash everyone and educate everyone in the way of, you don't need a weapon, just sit there, don't do anything, just listen to what they say, and everything will be all right. It's the same tactic they use with the militarized police. whatever they say, don't fight them, just do whatever they say, treat them like royalty. And we can see this is the mentality they're using on the people right now, which is absolutely ridiculous. Now, if this was truly the case and we shouldn't have weapons, then guess what? We should replace all the Secret Service weapons with wasp spray cans, because, if someone's invading the White House, they spray them with wasp spray. All the police should have wasp spray, because this is one of the best defenses against criminals, and the police should, try to treat them like royalty and do whatever they say. And this is absolutely ridiculous what they're talking about here. It doesn't even make sense to a logical person. I mean, seriously, if you had a family in a house and someone broke in, do you really think as you're letting them go through the house, all they're going to do is steal your stuff? No. If there's women in the house, if there's children in the house, they are not safe whatsoever. We've seen it time and time again. And this advice is absolutely terrible. Okay, now let's move on to Ebola. It looks like China is now bringing down additional medics to help Ebola-stricken Sierra Leone, and they're bringing more doctors into the country, about 174 more, and they're going to help the medical staff in Sierra Leone combat the Ebola crisis right now. Now, on the other hand, the United States central bankers are going to be sending about 3,000 U.S. soldiers to fight Ebola, which is very different. I mean, of course, they're bringing some aid there and medical assistance, but most of it is military soldiers to maintain control in West Africa. And we can see right now how they're really maneuvering this and setting this up. They're bringing the troops in. They're going to station them in many different countries. You'll see more troops coming in. And of course, they couple this with medical supplies, with medical help. They're bringing in funds to help the situation there. But the whole cover story here is to get the military troops inside the countries, because once they're in there, it is very difficult to get them out. And we do understand that the IMF now is loaning these countries lots of money because their economy is suffering at this point. Now, it looks like Russia is going to help Argentina. Now, Argentina's been getting a lot of help since it defaulted, and everyone was saying that Argentina was going down, and we're starting to see that Russia and Argentina, they're going to raise their trade by 50% in 2015 thanks to energy and food supplies. Russia-Argentina may increase bilateral trade to $3 billion in 2015 thanks to energy projects and food supply. Russia would expand its presence in Argentinian energy sector, and it looks like they're really pushing hard to make these deals with Argentina. Power Machines Company will deliver turbines. Russian nuclear agencies will build a 5th nuclear power plant in Argentina. And company Russia and Argentina have also concluded contracts for delivery of 1 million tons of liquefied gas and supplies, oil products. Russia has agreed with Argentina on growth of meat and dairy product supplies. Argentinian butter and cheese producers will make an alternative to European meat and cheese producers. So we can see right now, we have China and Argentina. The BRIC nations are in there. They're pumping in billions of dollars into the infrastructure of Argentina, building railways, loaning them money, helping them out of the economic situation. On the other hand, they've defaulted on a lot of U.S. bonds. A court order was saying that the bondholders can collect, but it doesn't seem like this is really working out, and it looks like Argentina is moving away from the west, moving over to the east, and we're going to see a lot of countries heading in this direction. Now, China is out there, and they are working with Mali right now on new projects worth about $11 billion. Russia and Zimbabwe are working together and discussing and have outlined plans for economic, military, and technical cooperation. So China and Russia right now are making deals all over Africa right now. Meanwhile, the United States central bankers are bringing in troops, creating terror plots, using Ebola to decimate the economies in these areas, And we can see exactly why this is happening, because Russia and China are making business deals. They're infiltrating these countries, and the United States central bankers will not let this happen. They will not let them get hold of the natural resources, and the African nations are becoming more friendly with China and Russia than they are with the United States. Most of the African nations don't even want the United States in their countries at this point, and this is why they have to use terror and Ebola to get in there. Now, Russia is expanding into Turkey right now, and Russia and Turkey may significantly increase the use of their respective national currencies in mutual payments, which means they're going to bypass the dollar. Now just 1.5 billion, or a little bit less than 5% of our 32.7 billion bilateral trade operates in mutual currencies. Increasing the use of national currencies is possible through developing correspondent bank networks, including subsidiary banks, and developing the relations between the central banks, the possibility of conducting swap operations, and through the possibility of spending part of reserves on investing in bonds nominated in Russian rubles or the Turkish liras. So we can see right now they are pushing everywhere you see. They want to completely work with these countries and bypass the dollar and use mutual currencies. And you can see they're doing this to each one of these nations. China's doing the same exact thing, and the BRIC nations are becoming stronger and stronger as time goes on. And we can see why war is in the air, why the United States central bankers are provoking China in the Pacific, provoking Russia in Eastern Europe, and starting the war in the Middle East. Now, it looks like U.S. armored vehicles have started to arrive in Estonia ahead of a 3-month drill starting in October. The U.S. Army's Armored Infantry Company, which includes M1 Abrams tanks, infantry combat vehicles, and armored vehicles, is expected to arrive for training in Estonia. The Baltic states and Poland are to receive 4 squadrons with a total of 600 servicemen of the 1st Brigade of the 1st Cavalry Division of the U.S. Army. They will replace the paratroopers of the 173rd Airborne Brigade currently at the site right now. Now, NATO is out there once again, and General Rasmussen has rejected Crimea's recent elections and urged Russia to reverse its reunification with the Black Sea Peninsula. NATO does not recognize the reported election held on September 14th in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. We continue to condemn Russia's illegal and illegitimate annexation of Crimea and its continued and deliberate destabilization of eastern Ukraine in violation of international law. And this is coming from Rasmussen, the NATO chief. And we can see right now they are still pushing the same theme. They haven't stopped because the bankers have an agenda. And what's interesting right now, there is a huge amount of troop buildup near Crimea on the Ukrainian side, where NATO military assets are being brought in, troops are being brought in. And at this point, Russia's taking a look at this, and they're wondering to themselves, are they going to make a move into Crimea at this time? And Russia is going to increase its military presence on the Crimean Peninsula as the situation in Ukraine has escalated sharply. The deployment of proper and self-sufficient forces in the direction of Crimea is one of Russia's top priorities. The military-political situation in the southwestern strategic direction has changed significantly since the beginning of the current year. This is largely due to the expansion of the territory of Russia, Southern Military District, after Crimea joined Russia. And it looks like something is starting to happen in this region, and we're going to have to watch it very closely. And we can see there is more rioting happening in Ukraine. It looks like the parliament leaders are going to be vetted. If they're part of Yanukovych party, they will not be allowed in there to join the parliament right now. And it looks like there are protests going on there, and it looks like one of the parliamentary leaders was thrown into a trash bin, and things are starting to heat up in this area. And we have to understand the economy is falling apart. There's no gas coming into Ukraine. The currency is imploding on itself. At least they have a ceasefire right now where they don't have to draft more people into this fight. But it seems like there are a lot of military assets moving into Ukraine, because I don't think the bankers are finished with their agenda. I think they're going to push this hard. Poroshenko is looking at Putin right now. I believe they made some type of an agreement, and I think we have two things going on right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if Poroshenko's days are numbered in Ukraine. Now, it seems that there is more fake images coming out. U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine Jeffrey Pyatt has been caught posting unverified images on his Twitter feed on Monday. He was showing off the ongoing U.S. Kiev military exercises in Ukraine. The ambassador then posted a picture of German tank allegedly taking part in the drills. His tweet said that the Leopard 2 tank is taking part in a rapid Trident exercise in the country. And what we see right now is Twitter users found out that the posted image was actually taken from a YouTube video uploaded nearly 1 year ago, and they continually do this. It's amazing to me. They just can't tell the truth or upload real pictures of what's going on. But it seems like pretty much all these government officials just know one thing. They just know how to lie, and that's it. And it's very difficult for them to tell the truth of what's really going on. Now, in Lebanon, it seems that this is the second day in a row that Lebanon went dark. Lebanon was hit with a second complete blackout in less than 24 hours, around 2:30 p.m. Tuesday, and for the second time in less than 2 days. All the production units on the network were disconnected, which led to cutting the electricity flow to most of the Lebanese areas. Now, we have to remember, the tribes are rising up in Lebanon. They are fighting against the puppet regime. The United States is sending in military assets and personnel into this region to support the puppet regime. The tribes now are making huge amount of gains inside Lebanon, and they're cutting the power to confuse them, and it seems like either this is a strategic type of way they're trying to stop them, or it's some type of test where they're just going to knock out all the power inside the country and maybe make some bombing runs inside the country. So we'll have to watch this and see what is going on there. And right now, the House is expected to vote on training Syrian rebels to fight the Islamic State, and we see that they're voting on, arming them, but maybe they didn't get the memo, because the Islamic State and the Free Syrian Army signed a non-aggression pact where they'll work together. So really, this is one force now working towards getting rid of Assad. Now, if the Congress decides to vote, okay, let's give them more military assets, they're in effect arming the terrorists at the same time, aren't they? So maybe they need to look out and see what's really going on before they do anything like this. But of course, as we know, they're being backed by Israel. We understand that these are the central bankers. They realize they need to push this forward, and most of them pretty much are on the warpath right now, and that is the only thing they are hearing, and they're trying to push this as hard as they possibly can. Now, it looks like the UN peacekeepers leave the Syrian-controlled Golan Heights, and this leaves a huge big opening, and we can see that these forces have been withdrawn, so something big is going to happen in Syria. They are getting prepared. Remember, there's a no-fly zone in Syria right now. The UN peacekeepers have been removed from the Syrian-controlled Golan Heights section, so it looks like something is going to happen. And of course, this is a direct path for Israel to move right into Syria to support, but we'll have to see if they actually do anything. But we can see by removing them, making sure they don't get hurt, because there are going to be bombing runs in this entire region, and of course, it's going to clear the way for the Islamic State and the Free Syrian Army to move up and get Assad. Now, it looks like they're saying that there's going to be no combat mission inside of Iraq, but we're going to deploy another 1,600 military advisors, which brings the total up to, 3,900 boots on the ground? Thank God there's no boots on the ground whatsoever. Washington is not going to have a combat mission in Iraq, Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel said, but 1,600 military advisors are to be deployed to help fight the Islamic militants. The U.S. is also ready for targeted actions in Syria. This will not be an easy or brief effort. We are at war with the Islamic State as we are at war with Al-Qaeda. Hagel said. So we can see they're pushing this agenda very hard. Now, what I'm seeing is that the United States government and the corporate media are trying to link Syria in some way, and it's a tough thing to do because Syria has done absolutely nothing to the United States whatsoever. They have not attacked the United States. They only said they wanted to work with the United States, but the goal has always been the same: remove Assad from government and replace him with a puppet government and then move into Iran. And we can see right now the corporate media is out there saying that the Syrian tactic of using Islamic militants to create instability, and then Syria is relying on the U.S. to destroy them. Well, does that make any sense whatsoever? They created this as a tactic, and then they want the United States to fly into Syria to destroy them. Washington, and this goes on to say, and this is out of NBC News, Washington fell for it once and may do so again. ISIS is in many ways a creation of the Syrian regime. Now Syria wants the U.S. to destroy the group. We've seen this movie before. Assad unleashed the Islamists again. The first time he wanted to bog down U.S. forces in Iraq. This time he wanted to bog down the rebels and their American backers. So they're saying the Syrian government released the Islamic regime inside of Syria to slow down the rebels. And they did this on purpose, and now it got out of control, and they want the United States to come into their country and bomb them. This is the spin they're trying to put on this. But they left out the part where the Free Syrian Army made a non-aggression pact with the Islamic State. And as we know from Edward Snowden, the Islamic State was created by Israel. There's a Mossad agent who heads it up. I think his name is Elliot Scheiman. And the United States is involved. They work with CIA. They also work with UK and other Arab nations. They left that completely out of it, and this story makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And they're trying to spin this any way they can. Now, they are also reporting that ISIS has this magazine, just like Al-Qaeda. They have time to print up magazines. They get advertisers. You know, it's a big production here. An Islamic State magazine called Dabiq has warned that the United States and other Western crusaders are facing Armageddon at the hands of the terror group's fighters. So they're putting out the warning that we're coming after you, United States. And they're just pushing this as hard as they possibly can. All of this. Peter King was out there. He's issuing a dire warning about the threat posed by the Islamic State, saying, you know what? ISIS is not afraid to put a bomb in Manhattan. Didn't we hear the president say that once before? That these Syria or the Islamic State could place a bomb, a nuclear weapon in Manhattan? So it seems like they're still using the fear factor to convince everyone that the Islamic State is coming here to the United States. Now, there are emergency drills going on in Nebraska, and this is going to simulate nuclear explosions. A drill scheduled for today and Wednesday in Nebraska, which simulates a nuclear explosion near I-80 in the vicinity of Scotts Bluff. The Regional West Medical Center is scheduled to participate in the drill in the capacity of training to decontaminate victims, ensure accurate reporting, and treating injuries. The drill is part of a large exercise involving 21 governmental agencies. Now, as we know, usually when they have these huge drills, there could be some type of false flag event. I just wanted to mention this and keep this out there in the open so we understand that what is going on in this region, and we understand a lot of the government officials have been fear-mongering about dirty nukes and those type of things, so I wanted to bring that up here. Now, a Texas sheriff reports that, yes, ISIS terror cells have come across the border. We have seen Muslim clothing, and the Quran books are lying on the side of the trails, and they have come over the border, and they're inside the United States. Now, on the other hand, Homeland Security denies that ISIS is in the United States, that ISIS has come over the Mexican border, and they're saying there is no credible intelligence to suggest that there is an active plot by the Islamic State to attempt to cross the southern border. Now, of course, they're doing this because they're keeping the border wide open for the illegals to come in. And they have to say, no, 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 don't worry. No terrorist groups are coming over that area because they know because the borders are wide open. So this story really doesn't make any sense whatsoever. They're just covering themselves with this story, trying to convince everyone, since the borders are open, we know for a fact that there are no terrorists coming across. Now, of course, they're not really terrorists. They're all part of the inside workings of creating this false flag event. And, of course, as we know, most of them are already in position. The plan has already been laid out. They are waiting for the green light to go and really push this event forward. Now, the United States central bankers are out there, and they're kind of using the same story they did with bin Laden in Afghanistan. Remember those pictures where they showed the underground hideouts they were hiding in, where they have many levels and they knew exactly this is where his TV is, this is where he hung a picture, he has a couch, the color is green, he painted his walls orange. We know everything about him, but we just don't know where he is. The same thing is happening once again. They're saying the Islamic State has gone underground in its Syrian stronghold since Barack Obama authorized U.S. airstrikes on the ground in Syria. Well, he really didn't authorize it. He can't authorize it, first of all, because Syria never really bombed attacked the United States, so he has no authority to say, let's go into Syria. Syria is a sovereign nation, but they continually say this over and over in the corporate media to convince everyone that he's authorized it. And they're saying that the Islamic State is disappearing from the streets. They're redeploying weapons and fighters and cutting down its media exposure, where they're not producing as much social media as they once did because they're going into hidings. Now, these fortresses underground where they're hiding, of course, a couple days from now or whatever, we're probably going to see drawings of their bases underneath Syria, and they'll probably show us, many different levels and where their couches are and things like that. But they just don't know where any of them are. But they have all this other information. And it seems like they're just continually repeating the stories, and everything that worked before, they're trying it once again. And I don't know if many people are buying into this at this time. Now, Al-Qaeda is saying that all branches of terrorism should unite together against Washington. Branches of Al-Qaeda in North Africa and the Arabian Peninsula released a joint statement Tuesday calling extremists in Iraq and Syria to join together in order to oppose the U.S.-led anti-terrorism coalition. Now, you have to remember, wherever the terrorist groups are, that's where the United States can go. There's a bill floating around. They're going to be voting on this. And, of course, it says if the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, or any other terrorist group, the United States has the right to go after them. An appeal by Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, distributed in Twitter, urged Islamic extremists in Iraq and Syria to stop fighting each other and unite against the American campaign and its evil coalition. So we can see they're pushing this very, very hard to convince everyone that all the terrorist groups are now coming together, and they're going to be one large terrorist group that the United States central bankers have to fight. And of course, we can see the plans are eventually to get into Syria, to clear the path for the Islamic State and the Free Syrian Army, because they're working together now, get Assad, and then eventually move into Iran, and then go after Russia and China, because eventually they will join in on the fight, because we have to remember Russia does have a seaport in Syria, and of course Russia's going to protect that, and as the Free Syrian Army and the Islamic State move up and bombings continue, they will eventually get into the fight, and they will be joined in by China. Now, the problem is, as it's always been, how is the United States going to go into Syria? Now, of course, they can just do it, but they don't have the United Nations. Russia and China have been saying, don't bomb Syria. Syria has been saying, do not bomb us. We are a sovereign nation. We have not given you permission. If you'd like to work with us, contact us. So this poses a problem, and this is where the event comes in. This is where the false flag event occurs, and this is why they're taking the time right now trying to link Syria with the Islamic State, because even if the Islamic State does create the event here in either UK or here in the United States, it doesn't link it to Syria, and it still doesn't give them the right to go into Syria to find the Islamic State. Maybe they can convince Syria, listen, we're going to bomb anyhow because the Islamic State did this, but I think they really want to get Syria involved with this somehow, some way, to make sure that everyone realizes that Syria was a part of this, and then eventually bring in Russia, saying, yes, they're the ones who brought in the malware into the financial institution and brought the economy down, and we can see how this plan is now being laid out. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.